Hola, hola. We are live again with another info session here for Bamboo Languages. I'm the founder, Bryson, and we have El Mejor Profe del Mundo back one more time, Stephen Fuenmayor. He teaches English on our platform and has helped many students pass the IELTS. So, if you are studying English, in particular studying for IELTS, you're in the right place. Uh, in this live stream, we'll cover best tips and tricks on how to succeed and some of the best strategies that Stephen has seen be successful for the students he's worked with. And the best news is it's all for free. So, we're happy you're here, and let's get started. This is just a brief overview of our agenda. Uh, we'll talk a little bit more about our company, Bamboo, and our mission to help help people learn and language learners learn through conversation and practice in a safe space and community. We'll go through all the IELTS best tips and tricks, finish up with some test day management and some resources that might help you succeed. All right, starting with us here, as I mentioned, our goal is to help language learners connect with other language learners and also expert instructors like Stephen to learn and practice through conversation. We believe that it's easy to practice grammar and learn some of the more textbook pieces of language, but language is learned and used in the real world in conversation. And that's what our goal is as Bamboo. That's our goal to deliver through our platform. We do that in three ways. We make it pretty accessible. We have a free version where you can create a language group or join a language group and also join language classes to meet up and practice with other individuals. The second one is instructor-led language groups and classes. For example, if you're practicing English, you would join one of Steven's groups and practice with other language learners and receive feedback from him for a variety of different topics, from grammar, real world experiences, conversation in a business meeting, for example. That's the class for you. And then finally, which is very closely related to this info session, we offer exam preparation programs to get you to achieve your language goals, whether it be IELTS, TOEFL, DELE, or SELE. We're there to help you achieve that. So that's a little bit about us. Our mission, again, is to build a community, and that's part of what we're doing here today. And we will get into it. As I mentioned earlier, we have the best professor in the world right here with us live on stream. He's helped many students. I can mention pass the IELTS and other exams. We're very happy to have him on board. And at this point in time, I can turn it over to him to introduce himself and get started with the presentation. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you very much for having me here again, Bryson. And well, it's a pleasure to be here, guys, and hope you answer all of your questions about the IELTS test. Well, as Bryson said, I'm Steven, and I am a language instructor. I've been teaching English, French, and Spanish for over 15 years now, and I've been preparing students for international exams such as IELTS and TOEFL for over 10 years. And well, today we're going to be learning a little bit more about IELTS. Last week was TOEFL, so now it's the other one. Your, I would say that one of the two most famous international certifications in the world. So that would be IELTS.
Perfect.
So, well, let's talk about how we can understand then the IELTS exam. So, IELTS is unlike TOEFL. TOEFL basically focuses on academic topics. It's more academic oriented. I would say that IELTS has two different options. We have the academic component, and we also have the general component, which we call trainings. Actually, the academic training and general training, but they are very similar to TOEFL in the way that they don't evaluate or assess grammar explicitly, but implicitly through different activities. So we have four components. So that's listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And they are, as I said before, is one of the two most important international exams at the moment, and they are accepted by thousands of universities and institutions in the world.
Definitely.
And
And
well,
just
just before we can, sorry,
go
sorry,
ahead, go
Grayson,
ahead.
go ahead. I was just going to mention, just before we move on, I was just going to mention that, well, the academic version of the academic training is mostly for people who would like to study at university, while the general training is mostly used for immigration purposes. But go ahead,
Makes sense.
Reza.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you mentioned TOEFL last week. We thought that went so well. We had some positive feedback from the students. We thought we would present the other half, the second most important, or one of the two most important English exams, and that's how we landed on TOEFL or on IELTS. So sorry to interrupt. We'll move forward.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Okay, let's cover the general tips for success. So, just as we mentioned last week for TOEFL, we need to understand what the exam is like, what we are going to face the day we take the exam there, either at home or at the test center. So it's very important to do different mock tests. That's very important. Learn vocabulary. Yeah, as I said last week too, I would say that yes, it is important to learn some vocabulary, but this is not the main focus because just learning words, that's not going to help us much. I would say that the most important thing is to know what the exam is like and different tips that can help us perform better. Because we don't need to understand everything, for example, in the reading section in order to answer those reading activities, but we need to have some strategies for reading in order to answer the questions effectively. Practice is very important. So yeah, we need to do a lot of mock tests, for example, and managing our time because just like TOEFL, IELTS, the activities are timed basically, especially well, all of them, especially the speaking parts. Part number two, we are given a certain amount of time in order to deliver our response, and for the reading and the writing sections, a lot of people struggle keeping up with the time given. So we need to practice a lot in order to make sure that we deliver the activities in the expected amount of time. Okay, the reading section. I would say that IELTS, when it comes to reading, is a little bit more difficult than TOEFL because they normally don't give us the options. Of course, we have different types of activities. We have multiple choice in which we do have the options to select from, but most of them are sentence completion, labeling a diagram, labeling a map. Even yes, in the reading we have map labeling as well. We may have summary completion. So we are not given the options most of the time, okay, and we are not told where or in which paragraph we are going to find the answer. So that's actually what makes IELTS a little bit more difficult than TOEFL. But there are some tips that we can follow in order to do the activities in the best way. Okay, so keeping this in mind, we need to understand that there are two different types of trainings. So that will be, for example, the academic training, which we are going to read academic tests or passages. And we have the general one, in which we are going to read articles, maybe advertisements, uh, and of course, the level of complexity is going to depend on the component, either the academic or the general training that we go for. As we mentioned before, reading is timed, so we have 60 minutes in order to answer 40 questions. And not only to answer those 40 questions, it's also to transfer those answers to the answer sheet. So it's not just okay. I'm going to answer the questions and that's it. No, no, no. We need to make to reserve or to allow some time for transferring the answers to the answer sheet. So that's very difficult there if we don't keep this into account. And another thing that is very important when taking the IELTS test is that if we have the correct answer, but that answer is misspelled, it would be marked wrong, I'm afraid. So that's one of the difficulties. But if we practice a lot, if we follow some recommendations and tips in order to read the passages more effectively, and we know what to focus on, we can definitely nail this exam. It's not impossible, just with the right guidance.
Attention to detail seems to be very important, obviously, to make sure not
Yeah,
only completing the task on time, but making sure things are spelled correctly.
so we need to find the balance, to strike a balance between those two, accuracy and speed.
Yes.
Okay, the listening section. I prefer listening when it comes to IELTS. I prefer listening. Um, I mean, when compared to TOEFL, because here we know what to listen for. So we are always given the questions before we answer. So it's not like we are going to be blindfolded, and then, okay, so let's
Hmm.
see what happens. Okay, surprise, this is a question. Okay, so we are always given those questions, but we need to read them very quickly. So
Hmm.
normally we are given 20 seconds before the audio begins, before the track starts or it's played, and we need to read those questions in order to know what to listen for, but also in order to find synonyms. Because actually, this is something that we forgot to mention in the reading section. When reading, we need to think about synonyms because the words that appear in the questions are different from the ones we are going to find in the passage. And in the
Hmm.
listening section, it applies as well. So we need to pay attention to the words that appear in the questions because they are not going to be the same that we are going to listen. And the other, for example, if they say girl, maybe they are going to say check. I
Hmm.
mean, of course, is maybe not the an ideal word because it's very informal, but it's just an example. Or maybe instead of child, they would say kid.
Hmm.
So we need to pay attention to synonyms. And another tricky part about the listening section, this is something that I actually love because it's like a challenge, is that they normally change their answers. So we need to be careful, not get too excited, like, oh my God, I got this answer, so I'm going to write it down. Because maybe when we are writing, while we are taking that answer, um, the speaker just changes the answer. So it normally happens with numbers and email addresses, for example. But the good thing is that when they change this, they always give us some clues like, however, I seem to remember. So we know that every
Hmm.
single time that we hear like something like, but hey, then 1 minute. Okay, so it's because they are going to change their answers. My recommendation in this case is to always write down the first answer that we hear, but keep listening. And then if you see that they are going to change that answer, then stop and focus on the new answer.
Hmm.
What else can we say about the listening section? Oh yeah, we need to pay attention to distractors. Paraphrasing, we already mentioned that we need to pay attention to synonyms and distractors. That's also very important because sometimes, um, let's say that we have the listening and we start listening, and then we cannot see what or where the answers are actually coming, and we just get distracted after 1 minute listening because we think, oh my God, the information is not there. But suddenly all of the questions start to appear, so we need to be careful to those distractors. And basically, that would be it for the listening section. So it's basically very important to pay attention to synonyms. That would be a key point to keep in mind, and to pay attention to those distractors and when they change the answers. Practice with diverse accents, so that's very important too. Normally, they use British accents, but we are also going to find maybe people from India, but people from Australia too. So we need to be familiar with those accents as well. But they normally speak very clearly, so it's not going to be a big problem.
More clearly than me, which is helpful. So hopefully it won't be too confusing for you.
Mhm. Yeah, oh, yes, totally. So, guys, speaking the speaking section, I would say that the speaking section is not as difficult as TOEFL's because there is only one time activity, but it doesn't mean that the fact that we are not going to be timed doesn't mean that the activities are going to be easy. They are still going to be challenging, but the good thing is that we don't have the pressure of time. The only part is going to be part number two, what we the one that we call the long run. That's basically it. We are given a cue card, and then we have to speak for about 2 minutes about that question. For example, they can ask us to talk about our favorite movie. So we have to say what the movie is, who the main characters are, what the plot is, and why we like that movie. So we're normally given 2 minutes in order to speak, but during those 2 minutes, we need to make sure that we provide all of the information, all of the questions in the cue card, and we don't know when the examiner is going to say stop. So maybe we are done with the question, and then we need to continue speaking because we cannot say, okay, I'm done. That's it for today. No, we have to wait for the examiner to say stop. But before that part, part number two, we have an interview with the examiner in which we are going to discuss general topics like, for example, where we work, what we study, and so on. And the third part, which tends to be a little bit more difficult, is the discussion because we are going to express our opinions about complex topics. But one more time, if we follow the recommendations for the discussion part, the recommendations are, for example, let's always try to make sure that we understand the question. Let's also remember that sometimes people look for interesting ideas, and it's not necessary to give an interesting response. Okay? As long as we answer the question with the correct vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar, that's it. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And always expanding our answers, but keeping the conversation during within the subject. Let's not go off topic.
I have a question, Stephen.
Sure.
I'm envisioning a student who has practiced either listening or maybe writing, but doesn't have the confidence to practice speaking for the exam. What would you recommend that student to do to build the confidence to then practice and then excel during that section of the exam?
Well, basically, the recommendation is to practice a lot. To practice a lot. We have a lot of different mock tests online that we can use in order to select one topic. For example, we can select the most common topics like architecture, literature, engineering, food. Then we can talk about those topics, record ourselves while giving the answers, and then listening to our responses to pay attention to whether we answered the questions correctly. And what I mean by answering correctly, when I say this, is answering the question itself, not answering a different question or going off topic. For example, if we are asked this question, where do you live? And then you say, I like my house because it's big and it's colorful. No, but the question is, where do you live? Maybe you can give that information as additional information, but the question is, where do you live? So I live in Colombia, for example, or I live
Hmm.
in Cartagena. That's a beautiful city in the north of Colombia, on the Atlantic coast. It's a beautiful city, as I said before. So that's it. That's
Hmm.
additional information. But the question is, where do you live? So now, why do you like your home, for example? So if we make sure that after recording our responses, we need to make sure that we did answer the questions and that we were fluent, that we used different
Hmm.
connectors. Like, for example, in addition, another point I would like to mention, the next, one thing that I would like to say is, so using those type of linking words can help us to organize our responses. So that's also very important. That's for part number one. For part number two, to use connectors again and to keep track of the time. How long am I taking in order to answer all of the questions on the cue card? That's
Hmm.
that's very important. Remember that we have 2 minutes, but sometimes the examiners can extend it a little bit more, and maybe we have to speak for 2 minutes and a half, and we cannot tell the examiner, "Okay, I'm done. That's it." Or, for example, maybe I'm digressing a little bit because we're talking about how to practice, but it's something that came
No,
to
it's
my mind
helpful. It's
right now.
helpful.
It's, for example, when people say, I don't have an opinion, we cannot say, hey, I don't have an opinion about it. We have to give our opinion. Maybe we don't have a strong opinion about the topic, but maybe we do. We know someone who does. So we can express that while we don't know much about the topic, we express our opinion, but we can mention what other people think, but always providing an answer. Let's never say, I don't have an opinion or I don't know what to say. And
Hmm.
basically, yes, it's recording and making sure that we organize our speech using linking words, that we use the correct vocabulary, the correct grammar, and practicing a lot. Remember that practice
Hmm.
makes perfect. The more we practice, the more comfortable we will feel with the test format.
Hmm. That makes sense. I appreciate it. And I'm sure the students do as well. All right, writing. What would you recommend
Okay,
here for us?
okay, writing. Writing, that's my favorite section. Okay, in the writing test. Okay, I know that it can be challenging for a lot of people, but one more time, if we follow the recommendations, we can write in a very organized way. We know that we are going to have, depending on the component or the training that we choose, if it is general or academic, there are going to be different types of questions that we are going to answer. Let's talk about the academic one. Task number one is going to be about a graph. So we need to describe factual information. It can be a graph, a line graph, a pie chart, it can be a table too, and we need to describe the information there. We are going to have, well, normally we don't have a set amount of time in order to do task number one. We just have 1 hour for the whole writing section. So it's normally
Hmm.
advisable to take 20 minutes for task number one because it's only 33% of the final writing score, and then
Hmm.
40 minutes for task number two, which is going to account for the rest. That will be more than 65%. Of course, so in
Hmm.
this case, task number two is going to be more important for the overall score. But then 20 minutes for writing this report about factual information about graphs. So we need to provide the key features of the graph, basically the information that is given. So what I mean by key features is, what do we see? What are the most important things that stand out when we look at the graph? So, for example, the major increases or decreases, if something stayed the same or remained stable, that's information that we need to make sure that we basically write in our report, that we include in our report. Um, let's not describe everything. A lot of people, this is one of the most common problems. A lot of people try to describe everything, but that's going to make us sound robotic, and we don't want to sound robotic. So that's why we need to be selective in task number one. It is, I would say that it is one of the most challenging ones because we need to learn how to read data. And task number one for the general component, for the general training, is a lot easier because we just need to write a letter. For example, maybe a letter to a friend inviting them over for dinner. And so we don't have to worry about numbers or anything. So it's just about writing a letter. Maybe it can be a letter, an application letter, maybe a complaint letter, but those
Hmm.
are normally, they don't require a lot of abilities in order to read factual information. So that's
Hmm.
why the general training is generally easier when it comes to writing. And task number two, yes, either for the general training or for the academic training, we need to write an essay. So for the essay, as we said before, 20 minutes for task number one. For task number two, we should have 40 minutes, or we should dedicate 40 minutes in order to do this activity. We need to write an essay, as we said before. So we need an introduction, then a body, and then a conclusion. Normally, we need to make sure that in the introduction we paraphrase the topic. So, what is the question? For example, most people think that smoking is negative for people's health, for example.
Hmm.
So, do you agree with this? So, we need to say, overall, a lot of individuals hold the opinion that, okay, instead of using believe or think, then we need to use synonyms and then express our opinion in the introduction, then give at least two reasons as to why we hold that opinion, and then in the conclusion, just give a summary. Well, restate your opinion first, and then give a summary of the main points as to why we have that opinion, or why we defend a certain point of view. The thing is that when it comes to writing, the most common topic is going to be an essay, an opinion essay. But then we have discussion essay, we have advantages and disadvantages, we have cause and effect. So there are different types of essay, but normally when we prepare for IELTS, we go through every single one of them. So that can help us in order to know how to organize them. But basically, they follow the same structure: an introduction, a body, and then the conclusion.
That makes sense. And I think obviously the informal one would be the most natural for people to, the most natural prompt for people to write to, but obviously both are useful when it comes to the opportunities after passing the exam. So that makes
Totally.
sense there. Um, Finally, we have test day time management. You touched on this in a lot of different sections, making sure that you keep track of time, write your answers down, while also making sure that you have enough time to either respond to the instructor or complete the section. Any other tips that you have here that you might be able to help students with for time management?
for time management sorry, yeah, to practice. It's very important to practice and to keep track of time. So if we say, for example, for the reading, so we need to make sure that we spend, let's say, about 20 minutes for every single passage because we have 60. But the thing is this, normally passage number 3 is the most difficult one. So we need to make sure that we allow enough time in order to do that one when it comes to the reading section. For the writing part, yeah, we just need to practice. The most important thing in order to keep track of time when it comes to timing problems is to practice and to keep track of the amount of time that we need in order to complete an activity. The most we practice, or the more we practice, the faster we are going to complete the tasks in the reading section and in the writing section specifically. This is where we are going to need more to be more aware of timing, basically. Um,
Hmm.
the test day. What else can we say? We're practicing a lot. I know that this is something that we mentioned last week, and it was about the resources.
Hmm.
Not all the resources online follow the standards of the exam. So, for example, something that we mentioned last week, it was about following the rules. Let's say
Hmm.
when we take IELTS, the answers are appear in the same order as in the questions. So let's say, for example, we are listening. Let's take the reading part, for example. In paragraph number 2, we find the answer to question number 3. That means that the answer to question number 4 cannot be in paragraph 2 or in paragraph 1.
Hmm.
They are always going to follow a sequence. So in the listening, if we check some sentences, for example, some questions that use exactly the same vocabulary as in the listening part, that exercise is not going to be effective because we are going to um, be. I would say that this is going to be like a bad habit. We are going to be used to listening to the words that we see on the test paper, but that's not what's going to happen on the exam day. So we need to make
Hmm.
sure that we select the correct resources that follow the standards of the exam. And this is maybe the biggest challenge, to be
Hmm.
selective when choosing those activities.
It's easy to find things that aren't necessarily helpful, but would help you practice listening, but you want to practice in a way that would emulate the exam and make sure that you're well prepared from that standpoint. You touched on it there, the last one, so I decided to move to the resources page. Anything you can think of um, while we're on the call here today that is a resource that comes to mind that does work for preparation, that is up to the standards of the IELTS exam?
Yeah, normally they are paid most of the time. Okay, so
Hmm.
but there are different pages that we can find online, and there is one that I have found particularly useful. The only thing is that we need to make sure we select the correct ones because some of them might not follow the standards, but most of them do. It's test my score, I think.
Hmm.
It has a lot of different mock tests. So I always
And we could put that in the description link or the comments
yeah,
afterwards. But he's looking for the link now for you all.
yeah, I think that I have already found that. Yeah,
Nice.
so IELTS online tests. Okay, so we have lots of them, but we just need to
Hmm.
make sure that we select the correct ones. Some of them, for example, they might not give us the necessary amount of time in order to read the questions. For example, the listening might start just right away. We know that
Hmm.
they normally give us 20 seconds in order to do the listening activities. So in those cases, what I advise is to stop the audio, then take 20 seconds in order to read the questions and then play the track.
Hmm. That makes sense. And what was it called? One more time, the URL.
Oh yeah, IELTS online tests.com.
IELTSonlinetest.com. Take a look there and then make sure to practice in the way that Stephen recommends so that you can be successful during the exam. One common theme that you heard Stephen say throughout the presentation would be practice, 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 practice. And at this point, we can circle back to what our platform provides a safe place to practice. Um, I think that conversation is huge. And so practicing in that capacity to build your confidence is something that would help you be successful on the exam. And also practicing with someone like Steven to get that expert feedback is something that is very helpful. And so at this time, we are running out of time. We didn't have um, a ton of questions pre-submitted, but one student did submit a question in
Mhm.
advance. They usually use books and workshops to improve their skills. They want to find if there are any other opportunities to do so. I think the IELTS practice site that you mentioned would be helpful.
Mhm.
Anything else you can think of that would be helpful, either books or resources, audio that might help that student?
Other resources for this type of activities. Well, I think that there are many different YouTube channels with recommendations and resources that we can follow as well.
Hmm.
So I would say yes, that would be one. For the speaking part, something that I forgot to mention is that on YouTube we can find a lot of mock tests, and
Hmm.
I have found them particularly useful because a lot of people think or they are not confident with their level of English, and they say, okay, I cannot reach a band six, for example. But then if
Hmm.
you pay attention to those videos on YouTube, those are people who got a 7 or a 7.5, and you can say, hey, look, I can do it too.
Hmm.
Okay, so it's a good way in order to compare the standards. If this person with this level, I think that I can actually have a very similar performance, so we know that we can get a similar band there. So there are different channels, YouTube. Right now, I cannot think of one, but if you look for IELTS prep materials, we're going to find different YouTubers.
Perfect. I wanted to give one more shout out to our professor. A big thanks for helping the students with some of the questions that they
Okay.
asked and just general best tips to be successful. Now, I will do one little plug for one of Steven's classes. He has a couple of classes on our platform that you can start for free as a part of the free trial and as a thank you for joining the live information session. I will present um, to show you how easy it is to sign up. And then obviously, if you have questions, you could email me directly or drop something in the comments. But I will share this for you. Steven, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it right now. Well,
All
level
right,
up your
perfect.
IELTS prep. That's what I can see right now.
Oh, okay. Let me see. We're going to add this to the stage. See what we got. Uh, okay, one second. And then here we go. So this is what it looks like on the Bamboo platform. Let's say you're studying for English, in particular IELTS. You could do a couple of things. One, as you scroll down to the middle here, you see that I have no classes booked, but I want to book one. Simple as clicking a class, and then you'll be able to navigate classes by the actual language they're teaching. Some of them are exchange classes here, like you see. Some are English, Spanish, and if you move over here, you see that Stephen has a couple classes tomorrow. both intermediate and beginner. It's as simple as clicking here and booking the class. And so for those students here who want to level up and bring their conversation practice to the next level, it's as simple as booking that with Stephen. Another way to do it would be navigating to the homepage, clicking English if you want to learn English. Then you have an access to all the language groups that you can join to practice or join the classes directly through here. So that's just a quick high level and a plug to join one of our professor's classes. If you enjoyed what you heard today and really enjoyed the IELTS tips and tricks, feel free to do so. We'll drop the link in our bio. And again, you can start for free and begin practicing your English or Spanish. Thank you again, Profe, el mejor profe del mundo, for another great live stream. I know our students enjoyed it, and we'll be sure to follow up with another one here in the next couple of weeks. But thank you again, and we'll see you all soon.
All right.